There is a death that occurs while you are still breathing. It doesn't come violently, it doesn't come suddenly. It arrives slowly, disguised as progress, wrapped in promises of security and social validation. You will wake up at 25 with the same mental structure you will have at 65. The job that was offered to you as a tool of liberation has become the prison itself, and even worse. You have learned to love your chains. The question that should burn your conscience is not how much you earn or what position you hold, but whether there is still someone inside that tired body who recognizes themselves as alive. At this moment, millions are sedated by routines. Are you one of them? Modernity has built its greatest deception on a simple promise. You are free to choose your career, your company, your professional path. This freedom of choice works as perfect anesthesia because it creates the illusion of agency where there is no true liberation. The system does not enslave you directly. It offers you options within a pre-established perimeter that it itself built. You can choose between prison A or prison B, but the structure that imprisons you remains untouched. Historical slavery had a defined characteristic. The slave knew he was a slave. There was clarity in domination. The collar was visible, metallic, inescapable. You could hate it openly. But modern slavery is too sophisticated for chains. It presents itself as opportunity. The system offers education so that you learn to value your own submission. It offers social mobility so that you believe you are climbing while only changing steps within the same vertical structure that shrouds you. When someone tells you that you are free to choose your job, what is really happening is a transfer of responsibility. Society removes from itself the guilt of exploitation and places it on your shoulders. If you suffer in the career you chose, the fault is yours. If the job destroys you, it is because you did not know how to manage better. This is the genius of the system. It not only dominates you, but convinces you that the domination is your fault. The promised economic freedom is a specter. It only exists as long as you don't truly try to leave the system. Try refusing work, and you will see how this freedom will evaporate instantly. It will be replaced by social pressure, by the need for survival, by the guilt of not contributing. The invisible collar will then appear in all its manifestation. No health insurance, no housing, no access to the basic resources that society has turned into commodities. The freedom that was promised to you reveals itself as parole, revocable as soon as you question its foundations. The true constraint of modern work does not reside in the amount of hours you offer, but in the amount of yourself that disappears to offer them. It is not only your time that is consumed, it is your ability to think differently, to imagine alternatives, to exist outside the context that defines you as productive. The illusion of economic freedom works because you believed that simply having options was synonymous with being free. But freedom is not variety of prisons, it is absence of prison. And as long as you depend on an external structure for your material survival, this absence does not exist. Every civilization needs a religion. Not necessarily a religion of divinities and explicit rituals, but a structure of values that organizes life, that gives meaning to submission, that transforms obedience into virtue. The religion of past civilizations was clear: to serve God or the gods. The religion of contemporary civilization is equally clear, but disguised as pragmatism, to serve productivity. And like every true religion, it has its martyrs, its prophets, its inviolable dogmas. The cult of productivity has established a simple and absolute morality. Your value as a human being is directly proportional to your ability to generate quantifiable results. You are not evaluated by your depth, your capacity for reflection, your real contribution to the lives of other people. You are reduced to numbers, to the amount of tasks completed, to the amount of clients served, to the amount of hours worked, to the amount of goals achieved. Your humanity has become metric. Under the regime of this religion, rest is sin, tiredness is moral weakness, contemplation is a luxury for those who don't work. Pause to think. That's lack of focus. Take a day to recover. That demonstrates lack of commitment. The system not only demands that you work, it demands that you celebrate work, that you internalize it as synonymous with personal value. Whoever stops is seen as useless. Whoever questions the structure is seen as lazy. Whoever rests is labeled as a failure. The genius of this religion is that it doesn't need a centralized institution to impose itself. You yourself have become your own priest, your own executioner. You monitor your productivity, fight against your own tiredness, blame yourself for not doing enough. External repression has transformed into internal repression. The system no longer needs explicit surveillance. You watch yourself, punish yourself, motivate yourself to produce more. The prophets of this religion constantly emerge, experts in personal optimization, gurus of maximum performance, consultants of efficiency. They all sell the same reformulated message: you are still not producing enough. There is always more optimization possible, more hours to be taken advantage of, more results to be achieved. This religion never offers true rest, because rest is death to its foundations. It only offers quick recharge so that you return to work even more productive. As long as you believe that your productivity is an expression of your value, you never question the structure that demands this productivity. You blame yourself for tiredness instead of questioning a system that exhausts you. You seek to improve your time management instead of questioning why all your available time must be managed for production. You have internalized the values of the system so deeply that now you defend it as if it were your own philosophy. This is the complete victory of any system of domination, when the dominated passionately defends the structure that oppresses them. The promise of success is the perfect bait, because it exploits the legitimate longing for meaning and recognition. The human being, by its nature, desires to leave a mark, desires to be recognized, desires to transcend insignificance. But the system has captured this legitimate longing and completely redefined it. Success has ceased to be synonymous with personal fulfillment and has become exclusively synonymous with material accumulation, social status, and external validation. The success that the system offers is always a ladder that never ends. When you reach one level, you immediately realize that there is another above. When you conquer a house, you realize that you could have a better one. When you reach a position, you see another higher one. When you get an amount of money, you realize that others have more. The system has created an infinite hierarchy specifically to prevent you from reaching rest. Rest is death to your motivation, and therefore death to the structure. He who loves life will never truly live it, said a 19th century philosopher. And this truth remains: the obsessive pursuer of success will never truly enjoy it. He is always anxious about the next goal. He is always comparing himself with those who have achieved more. He is always insecure about what he has conquered, because he knows that it is temporary in a structure where the hierarchy never ceases. His success is never enough because the system was built so that it never would be. The control tool of success works because the system has understood a profound truth. You will control yourself much more rigorously than any external authority could do. If you believe that success is the key to happiness, then you will put yourself in a voluntary prison much more severe than any imposed prison. You will sacrifice relationships, health, present joy for the promise of future success that never genuinely arrives. Personal success, when defined by the system, is always servitude, disguised as liberation. You believe you are climbing in life when you are only deepening in voluntary servitude. Each promotion makes you more dependent on the structure that promotes you. Each salary increase ties you more deeply to the commitments that this increase generated. You have built a life that depends completely on the continuity of the system that dominates you. Now, it is impossible to leave, not because they don't allow it, but because you cannot allow yourself to abandon the success you built with so much sacrifice. The system understood what every person in power has always known. It is easier to dominate someone who wants something than someone who wants nothing. Therefore, it created infinite desires. It created a hierarchy that is never complete. It created a definition of success that by its own nature is unattainable permanently. And you, pursuing this spectre, remain docile, productive, and controllable. There is a profound reason why the incessant routine is maintained. It is not merely an economic consequence or an inefficiency of the system. It is deliberate design. The system has understood something that philosophers already knew. A tired person does not think. An exhausted person does not question. A person too busy does not realize that they are empty. When you are working 8 hours a day, commuting another 2 hours, answering work messages at home, trying to keep your relationship working, feeding your body, sleeping the minimum necessary in this state. You have no mental space for big questions. You have no energy for contemplation. You have no availability to create an alternative life. You are too busy just to maintain the illusion that you are progressing. The routine is the perfect mental prison because it doesn't look like prison. You have various environments. You have the illusion of choice and variety. But your consciousness remains confined because there is no space for questioning. Questioning requires idleness. Questioning requires time. Questioning requires mental availability. And these are exactly the things that the system is dedicated to eliminating. A Prussian philosopher of the 19th century wrote that most people don't really want the truth, they just want peace of mind. Work offers exactly that, peace of mind through distraction. You don't need to question the meaning of your life because you are constantly busy. You don't need to confront the emptiness because there is always something to do. You don't need to face existential anguish because there are always tasks, goals, objectives that divert your attention. This is the reason why modern work is so disconnected from reality. Not because it is inefficient or poorly organized, but because its inefficiency is functional. A truly important task that took 3 hours would be dangerous. You would finish earlier and have time to think. Therefore, tasks are inflated, deliberately complicated, multiplied beyond their need. You remain busy not because there is true work for all this occupation, but because the occupation is the objective itself. When you finally stop, and we all stop eventually, that's when the anguish arises. That's when you confront yourself with the question that the system dedicated your professional life to avoiding. Who are you really without all this external structure? What exists inside when you remove the professional role? This is the reason why retirement is so often followed by deep depression or rapid death. The structure that defined you has disappeared, and you discover that you have lost the ability to define yourself in another way. Work is the perfect existential distraction because it temporarily solves the fundamental problem of the human being, the need for meaning. It doesn't offer genuine meaning, but it offers the illusion that life has direction and purpose. It offers enough occupation so that you don't realize that you are empty, and when you eventually realize, it is usually too late. Historical slavery was explicit in its cruelty. It was possible to hate the oppressor with clarity. But contemporary slavery masks itself as care. The system not only exploits you, it convinces you that the exploitation is an expression of love for yourself. It not only controls you, it convinces you that the control is personal liberation. This sophistication is what can be called emotional capitalism. Exploitation has ceased to be something that is done to you and has become something that you do to yourself in the name of personal fulfillment. The system no longer tells you work because you are obligated. Now it says love what you do and work won't seem like work. The difference is profound. In the first situation, you can recognize the oppression. In the second, you internalize it as choice. Corporations have understood that the old external domination no longer works with educated people who know their rights. Therefore, they have implemented a more sophisticated strategy to make you love the prison. They create work environments that look like communities. They create benefits that look like genuine care. They create discourses about purpose and impact that look like real meaning. And more importantly, they create a culture where expressing discontent is seen not as legitimate criticism, but as lack of gratitude or inability to align with the company's values. The modern man is not enslaved by chains, but by the illusion that he is free, wrote a philosopher in the era of industrialization. And this truth has never been so relevant. You are convinced that loving your work is an expression of freedom, when in reality, it is the most sophisticated form of acceptance of servitude. Because when you love your work, you cannot complain about it. When you love your work, you cannot question whether you deserved more. When you love your work, you justify overtime as an expression of personal commitment instead of exploitation. Emotional capitalism works because it captures your legitimate desires for meaning and belonging and redirects them to the objectives of the system. You want to make a difference. The system offers the illusion that you are making a difference through work that increases corporate profits. You want to be part of a community. The system offers the corporation as a community where your loyalty must be absolute. You want to be recognized. The system offers recognition, but controlled and conditional. This strategy is brilliant precisely because you cannot point to it as oppression without seeming ungrateful. If you say that the company is exploiting you, you are contradicting the narrative that you love the work. If you say that you don't like the corporate environment, you are positioning yourself as misaligned with the collective values. The system has created a psychological trap where questioning your exploitation is equivalent to confessing that you have failed to find purpose. But under this layer of motivational slogans and corporate benefits, the reality remains. You continue to be exploited. Your work generates much greater value than you receive. Your hours are counted and limited, not for your benefit, but to maximize profit. Your loyalty is demanded, because if you realize that you are easily replaceable, the illusion of belonging would disappear. Emotional capitalism is slavery with a human smile. And perhaps it is worse than traditional slavery exactly because you have learned to defend it as your own philosophy. The trajectory that the system offers is always the same, reformulated in countless variations, but fundamentally identical. Work in youth. Sacrifice your years of maximum energy in exchange for promises of future comfort. Build a career, increase your salary, take on growing responsibilities, buy a house, take out a loan, create financial commitments that tie you even more firmly to the structure. Grow old while working. Count the years until retirement. Finally, when your body can no longer work, you will have the time and perhaps the money to enjoy the life that was sacrificed. But when that moment arrives, you discover that the life you can enjoy is not the life you could have lived. It is the residue. It is what is left after the best years of energy, health, and potential were consumed by the work structure. It is material comfort acquired at the price of years of unlived existence. You work to have comfort, but you never have time to truly live it. When you are at work, your mind is divided. When you finally leave, you are so exhausted that the comfort you built is consumed in recovery. You buy a beautiful house but spend most of your time outside of it. You earn enough money to travel, but when you finally travel, you take with you the anxiety about the work you left. You conquer what they promised and discover that the promise was a hoax. The death you suffer is not instantaneous. It is death of potential. It is death of possibilities. It is death of who you could have been if your best years had been yours and not the system's. You are not really living during these years. You are only surviving towards a future that never arrives in the way it was promised. When freedom from work finally arrives, you are old. Your body is worn out. Your mind has been trained for decades to think only in terms of productivity and objectives. Your ability to imagine alternatives has been atrophied. A 17th century thinker wrote that no one dies as early as he who has lived only for others. You have lived for the expectations of the structure. You dedicated your best years to objectives that were not genuinely yours. You pursued external validation while your internal existence died silently. And the system called this fulfillment, called this success, called this a life well lived. The worst aspect of this death disguised as fulfillment is that it occurs completely within legality, within what is socially acceptable. You are not a victim of injustice, at least not of recognized injustice. You chose your prison, you worked hard, you were responsible. You followed the rules, therefore you cannot even claim victimization because you are participating in the very system that consumes you. When you finally face finitude, when you finally understand that the time you wasted really was finite, and that it was consumed, it is usually too late to change course. You may have material resources, but you have lost the resources that matter: time, health, potential, youth. The system offered material comfort as consolation for the sacrifice of a genuinely lived life. And you, aged and too tired to question, accept this false bargain as if it were the only option that existed. Before you walk away from this content, what is the price you are silently paying every time you open your computer to work? If this message resonated with something deep in you, write in the comments, "I want to recover my time." Share this content with those people who feel they are losing their lives under the guise of progress. Activate the notification and subscribe for philosophical analyses that confront the structures you believed were immutable. Until the next video.